Hey everyone, well I just did a modification to my Dodge Caravan. It's an 87, and if you had one of these vans or you have one now, you probably had the problem with the alternator overcharging or not charging at all. And now these alternators here don't have a built-in regulator, so what they used was a control board inside the ECM, which is here. So there's two boards inside this ECM here. And one's for the alternator. I think that's all it's for, one of the boards, and the other board is then the control module for the engine. It was a common problem where the alternator would just start overcharging, where you'd see like 18 volts on the gauge, and it happened to this one. And because these modules are kind of hard to get, now there's a few ways of fixing this. You can either replace the alternator, put one in with a built-in regulator, or you can buy an external regulator for it. So how that works is you'd have to cut off the field winding wires and you connect in the external regulator. What I did was temporarily, I just manually controlled the voltage, field voltage on the alternator. And so two wires come from the control module, and they're your field wires. They're the smaller wires that go into the alternator. Now they go to the control module and regulate the field voltage. So what I did is I just cut off the two wires, connected one to ground, and then I ran another wire into the van. So I'll go in here, show you how I did this. And I just connected them up to these rheostats here, and the rheostats then could manually control the field voltage. I have two of them because I can adjust it easily. A little more easily, and this is really Mickey Mouse way of doing this. So you just plug this in here and you can just control this, and away you go. So it worked for a long time, but I just got fed up with it because what happens is the voltage would then climb up. You'd have to then adjust the knob. Sometimes it would just work and then it would work perfectly on straightaways, but the problem was is when you accelerate, then the voltage would go up too high. So what I've done is I've just put a little GM into a Dodge here, and now this van, the air conditioning, the Freon compressor was fried in it, and the condenser and evaporator, so the air conditioning was completely shot, and it wasn't repairable. So I just removed the pump, and I've just mounted this GM SI 63 amp alternator. So you can see how I mounted it. I just used some 1/8 inch flat steel here, flat stock, drilled some holes, mounted it in, and then I used another piece of steel here that goes down to a bolt on the back of the alternator. Look in here. And then on the bottom, I just put an eyelet through and bolted it into the air conditioning mount. So it worked really easily. Now it only works with this van setup here, but you can just connect an alternator wherever you want if you can build the brackets for it. It's not always cut and dry, but this worked out pretty well. So on these alternators, you only have 3 wires. One is the main wire, the large wire that comes off of the bolt there, and that just goes over to the battery, so it's just connected to the battery terminal there. And then you have 2 other wires. One wire is the dummy light, and I believe that's number 1. And number 2 is just goes to 12 volts. And so that goes to your ignition. And what I've done, I've just run the wires into the van. It's kind of rough for now because I just wanted to test it out. And I've just connected it to a switch. For now, it's not on the ignition. And just have the switch and the dummy light here. And then all I have to do is, you can switch on the switch if you want, and then start the van, or you can switch it on after. It really doesn't matter. And then just fire it up. If it'll run. Okay, and then now you can see the voltage here is completely, it's not charging at all. So if I use the original alternator with the manually controlled field voltage, then I just plug this in here, and then I can just turn up these knobs and you'll see that there it goes, right? And then I can just adjust the voltage with the rheostat, so you can see that it climbs up, and there you go. But it doesn't maintain very well. It does work, but watch, if I throttle the gas, then the voltage spikes. So possibly if you wanted to, you could run this off of another battery that has just a steady voltage. Manually controlling the alternator is a pain in the ass. So, but it does work. It will get you out of a jam. But now with the GM alternator, you can see voltage is dropping down, and switch it on, and there we go. So the GM alternator now it's not, the voltage isn't changing with RPM, and it's working perfectly. So now I have two alternators, but two's better than one, right? And let's take a look. So it works perfectly, and so that saved a little bit of money there. I mean, of course you could just replace that alternator there with one with a built-in regulator. I didn't have one that would mount up the same as this, so the alignment would be out. It's not so easy to match up an alternator with the serpentine belt setup. This V-belt here is really easy, and to tension it, I can just adjust the idler pulley there for the air conditioning, and away you go. So it's working well. I've driven it around, and you know, everything's free, so that's why I did that, because I didn't have to buy a module or anything. Like I said, the modules are not so easy to find anymore. This is an 87, so, and usually if you find one, it's burned out. I'm just showing this so that it's just a really easy way if your alternator craps out on you and it's worth, you know, a lot of money. If you can somehow rig up an extra alternator, if you have another pulley on the main drive pulley, then you can do this modification, as long as you fit it in there somewhere. It has to be pretty rigidly mounted. You don't want this thing moving around in any way. It has to take the tension on the belt there, so you want it mounted pretty solid. Well, that was just a little look at the GM alternator on the Chrysler, and thank you for watching.